Good evening, you fantastic and glorious degenerates of this floating rock that we call Earth. Welcome to Off the Wire. I am your host, the Cajun Libertarian, aka Noello Lynn. And tonight on Off the Wire, we have a very special guest, Mr. Spike Cohen. Let's dive into it immediately right now on Off the Wire. Yes, indeed. Welcome back to Off the Wire with yours truly, your host, the Cajun Libertarian, Noello Lynn. Really quick before we get started, and we are going to get started fast, and it's going to be heavy. Gap Armory. Gap Armory carries a wide variety of parts and accessories, whether you're looking for build kits for 3D printed firearms, optics, outstanding level 4 body armor, or anything in between, they have you covered. Gap Armory is libertarian owned and operated. They also accept Bitcoin. Gap Armory has the gear that you need to bridge the gap in your defense preparedness. Get what you need today at gaparmory.com. That's gaparmory.com, GAPARMORY.com, gaparmory.com. And for the last sponsor of this particular show, whichever word that you want to choose there, which I intermingled by accident. You can go to disto.com. DSYDO is a libertarian-owned shirt company with designs intended to start a conversation. Use Cajun, I did it again. Code Cajun 15, CAGJUN 15 for 15% off your order at disto.com. Look, y'all, this is the best political t-shirt. They have a wide variety of paraphernalia when it comes to liberty. I'm just going to show you a couple here. Look at that. Safe and effective is now sudden and unexpected. So I'm sure you can derive from that or extrapolate from it, which you will. Also, dangerous liberty over peaceful slavery. So go check them out, dysdo.com. Now, without further ado, let's get on to our very special guest, Mr. Spike Cohen. Spike, how are you, man?
I'm doing good, Noel. Thanks for having me on. I was enjoying the comments here, where I guess we were a few minutes late, and people were saying, I now realize they're saying he was on Mississippi time, but they're putting MS time, and everyone's like, yeah, haha, MS time. That means they're going to be late. And I'm like, well, just because I have MS doesn't mean we're going to be. That's why we're late. And then I realized they meant you because of.
No. They didn't mean me. They're all just ableists. You guys are just progressive.
It's ableism.
Listen, you're racist.
MS doesn't make you late. I'm just naturally late. Okay, look, I was late long before I had MS.
That's what she said. Anyway, Moving on. I wanted to break something to you, Spike. I shared this on Wednesday on my solo episode. And for those of you that don't know, and I actually didn't alert Spike to this, but I renamed the show Off the Wire. I'm trying to rebrand.
That. Yes.
Yeah. Instead of the Cajun Libertarian show, I just feel like the Cajun Libertarian was pretty, juvenile, and I did not put a lot of thought into it. So in order to break new ceilings, I wanted to rebrand the show. And some of that has potentially began to work. So let me get some stats for you, Spike, that I wanted to share with you specifically that I introduced to the audience on Wednesday. In April of 2020, I was asked to join a Facebook Live and talk about libertarianism, which I had very little knowledge of. Okay, so a year and a half ago, I've had some great mentors, specifically you, in learning what this process was. And I went through it. I was asked after that live show, to continue to speak live on the internet specifically. I didn't know what a podcast was, which is pretty funny. And so then I started to do what we call this show right now a podcast. This year, a couple of weeks ago, last week, Anchor, which you turned me on to, Spike. I
Yep.
had no idea what Anchor was prior to that. Anchor.fm. If you don't know, y'all, go to it. If you're a podcaster, please go visit it and figure out if that's the right
Yes.
spot
If
for
you have
you.
a podcast, use Anchor. Yes.
Correct. Absolutely. And Anchor shot me the first full year in review of the Cajun Libertarian slash Off the Wire podcast statistics from January to December. I started last year. I had April to December. This year is the first year that I've gone from January to December with full reviews, barring a couple of weeks of breaks due to burnout. The podcast was streamed continuously in 9 different countries. It was an 183% positivity rate when it comes to new followers. This podcast is now in the top 15% globally of the world's most followed podcasts.
That's
This
great.
podcast is now in the top 25% of the world's globally most shared podcast. The reason that I wanted to brag about those stats with you on this show, Spike, is that you are now the easily the most frequent guest that comes on this show.
Mhm.
You are the most popular. So, like when Michael Malice talks about Dave Smith being the most popular, frequented guest, you are that guest for me. You
Yep.
have a major stake and you have a major influence into how this show has gotten so much success. So much so that the top 2 downloaded podcasts of the year of this program were both yours. So, Spike, thank you very much.
Well, thank
When I
you.
mean that, no, thank you. This is unprecedented territory. This is nothing that I would have ever could or have imagined to be even a possibility. And you're a major contributor to it. And a lot of people don't know. I know you don't brag about this a lot. I brag about it for you. You are a major influencer. You're a major mentor of me and libertarianism as a whole, and how much you do for this movement. I wholeheartedly 100% that this show wouldn't be, quite literally, according to the Spotify stats, one of the leading podcasts in the world had it not been for you and your
Oh, well, thank
influence and your mentorship on this show. Spike, thank you so much. You are a national treasure. I said it before. I'm not trying to kiss your butthole or nothing like that. You know I don't do that
Yeah,
kind of
but no,
stuff.
but that's one of the things that says on the Spotify stats is national treasure number 1, Spike Cohen. That's like actually one of the stats in the. You didn't quote that, but that's in
Yeah,
there.
correct. With the subtitle below with the captions of Kiss Butthole.
Yes.
Absolutely 100% correct. That's exactly how that's worded on
Yes.
Spotify. No, but man, thank you so much. Not just for this, because I know a lot of things go into what makes any particular or specific show successful. I know there's a lot of different various varying degrees and elements that come along with it. But there's no way, because in April, like I said, in April 2021, April 21 last year, I started in May on Veterans Day or Memorial Day, I think. You came on my show for the first time. That was when we officially met on the internet.
Yep.
And then it's been absolutely out of control since then. And so thank you,
Fantastic.
man. Thank you, more importantly, for what you're doing in the movement. And this is why when people ask me, oh, who do you want to run for POTUS as libertarian in 2024? And I'm like, like I can go a lot of different ways. Would I love for Spike Cohen to be the presidential nominee? Of course I would. But do I want more realistic and pragmatic responses and outcomes, which is what You Are the Power is doing?
Yep. Yep.
Then yes, I'm going to vote for the latter. Point blank, period, because the latter produces more realistic results. So
Yep.
tell us what's going on with You Are the Power and give us a couple of ways that we can support your upcoming events, please, sir.
Absolutely. So first of all, if you haven't already done so, I encourage everyone watching this to become a member of You Are the Power. Membership is free. If you go to youarethepower.net, you can sign up today if you haven't already done so. If you have money, we could use it as well, because every nonprofit, every political organization needs money to be able to do the work that we're doing. But more importantly, we want you to be a part of it. And you can do that by going to youarethepower.net. Now, with that said, the stuff we've been up to has been absolutely incredible. We have over 2,000 members. We are in all 50 states. We've split the country up into 7 regions. We have regional organizers for all of those regions. We're now identifying statewide organizers in each of the states that are going to be doing the granular work down with the members in each of those states. We have online organizers, the people that help us with putting together the work that we do, the social media swarming that you're seeing on Facebook and on Twitter and so forth. That's as a direct result of that. That's happening with our social media organizing. We are identifying causes. We now have a vetting council that vets all. We're getting every day anywhere from 15 to 20 different people reaching out to us, or actually 15 to 20 different causes, sometimes hundreds of people reaching out to us to tell us about these different things they've heard about or things that are happening to them. We send them to the vetting council, who vets them to make sure that they're legit causes, that there's something we can actually do about them, and then putting together an actual game plan for how we can work to help with those causes. The game plan of You Are the Power is pretty simple. We find people who are being harmed or abused or neglected or mistreated by their local governments. We get in touch with them. We help them to organize. We help people at the local level to organize, to get justice for those people and accountability for the people who did whatever happened to them. And then we use that as an opening conversation in those communities with those activists on how the root cause behind whatever that thing was that there was too much power and too little accountability in the hands of too few people, and that the only way long term that we're going to fix this thing, so that we're not just playing whack-a-mole with corrupt governments across the country for the rest of our lives, is to deal with the root cause, which is taking the power out of their hands and putting it back in the hands of the people. It is done in just the 6 months. Just almost 7 months that we've been launched. Since we launched back in May. The work that we've done in just that short period of time has been incredible, and I am very excited to see what is in store for 2023. Now, in the meantime, one other thing before I forget: if you live anywhere near Gastonia, North Carolina, on December 10th, we are doing it's a lasagna charity dinner for a man named Pastor Moses Colbert, who, if you've been following my social media, you probably know about his story. Long story short, he's a pastor in the area who was running the city of Gastonia's only homeless shelter. The city of Gastonia shut it down, claiming that he didn't have zoning for a homeless shelter, even though there is no zoning for a homeless shelter in Gastonia, and also claiming that he wasn't doing church work when he was housing homeless people, because apparently they haven't read the Bible. I'm Jewish, and I know that one of the main things that Christians are supposed to be doing is helping the poor. But anyway, so he has done some incredible work to work with them to be able to reopen a new and improved shelter. We are helping to raise funds for that. And so we're doing this lasagna dinner on December 10th. And if you cannot be there, but would still like to help, if you go to youarethepower.net/Gastonia, you can donate funds for that cause. And that's just one of the many things we're working on to help people across the country. And this is my life's work. We want to help people, and we want to bring people to the liberty movement. We're not going to do that just by running for office. That is a part of it, and at times an important part. But we've tried the strategy of letting people know about liberty by campaigning for office almost exclusively, and that hasn't worked. That's not where you get them, because if they just even if they like your ideas, if they don't think you're going to win, then they kind of write you off wholesale. Well, if you don't have any kind of momentum behind you, then you're not going to win. But if your strategy to build momentum is to use something where you're not going to win, then you've already defeated yourself. And you've helped to push forward the narrative that our main focus is on things that don't work. Now, how does that make us look? So that's what I'm doing with You Are the Power. I would love for you to be a part of it. youarethepower.net. We'd love for you to become a member. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it.
No, and I love the fact that you want to talk about it because I want people to understand and I want them to see with clarity and in full observance that this is something you're very passionate about. This is something that
Oh yeah.
you and your team are extremely motivated to do. And this is something that is actually going to affect real change. And
Yep.
listen, y'all, this is something that has already began to affect real change.
Yep.
This isn't
Yep.
some distant, futuristic,
Yep.
utopic, or utopian dream. It's already happening. It's
Yep.
making its course, it's making waves right now as we speak and prior to this show. So
Yep.
please, and correct me if I'm wrong, Spike. It is free to join. You're free
Free
to
to
get the
join.
newsletter.
Yep. Yep.
The newsletter.
It's free to join. You get on our email list, which is like our newsletter list. You get access to our membership network. You get access to all of our members only group. We have a Facebook group, a Discord server, a Twitter community that we're starting now that Twitter has their version of groups, which is community.
Right.
We will get you in touch with your local if your state has an organizer, with your state organizer and your regional organizer. You'll be plugged in with all the stuff that we're working on behind the scenes. We have all sorts of incredible stuff like we have training sessions on things like organization, messaging, leadership skills, networking. We actually just had our first one with Dwayne Lester of Grassroots Leadership Academy. We started that back on the 29th. It was the 29th, 30th, and 1st. We had about 100 people sign up for that. And those are 100 people that now have the tools for leadership. All of that is available when you become a free member of youarethepower.net. We do have paid membership, which comes with different types of swag. I think there's like a $50 one where you get like a swag bag and a sweater or a shirt or something like that. We even have a $500 package, which comes with a phone call from me. But all of that, no matter which, whether you get the $0 one or the $500 one or any of them in between, a member is a member is a member. The paid things just come with additional swag that you get to have, additional merchandise and stuff. But in terms of being a member, we don't have a hierarchy of membership other than the ones who do the most work are the ones who get the most recognition, because that's what we're focused on. We don't do elections for positions, so we don't have factions fighting over each other over who should be in charge. Do work and get acknowledged and move forward on it. That's our model.
Excellent. Excellent, excellent, excellent. I'm loving every bit of it. I had to pull this up. I pointed it out a second ago. That Space Eagle backdrop though, fire. That libertarian lady says that training was fire.
Wasn't it?
Hands up.
That's D,
Hands up.
right? I think that's D.
A D?
Yeah, D. Is that
A D or an A?
no D? The libertarian lady. I think that's her name's D.
Oh,
Yeah.
D
Anyway,
unsweet tea,
regardless,
maybe.
yes,
Maybe.
it was great. The train. I'm trying to figure out who that was because I knew pretty much all the people in the training. But yeah, no, the training was fantastic, and it was just the beginning. We're going to be doing all sorts of training like that. We're working on training for press relations, how to talk to the media. If you want to learn how to become an effective activist, and then work with other people who have taken that same training and have already had experience and work on being activists to do actual activism and actually help
Right.
people now, not wait for, like you said, some distant utopian future
right.
where libertarians take over the world and leave everyone alone. If you want to do that now, that's what we're doing. And we've already had examples of. I know there's other stuff you want to talk about, but we've had a lady whose family, she and her family almost lost their home because the zoning board was crookedly trying to steal her property after her home burned down. We were able to help put a stop to that. We've had people that we've worked with on initiatives to end qualified immunity, and we've had success on that. We're working on getting justice for people who were victims of police brutality. We're working with, like for Pastor Moses Colbert, people that weren't being allowed to feed homeless people and to provide them shelter. We're doing all sorts of incredible work. And I can't wait to continue with it. This next year is going to be the year that people see what liberty actually looks like, not what it sounds like, not what our philosophy is, but what the actual results and idea, what the solutions behind what we believe.
1000%. And that's why I like freaking promoting this because I find it kind of obscure or even maybe just intellectually disengaged. I don't know. Either one. I guess both are applicable. But what we're seeing right now with the obsession over the federal government, and then what you're doing with You Are the Power,
Hmm.
where we're tackling local government, which actually, via federalism and the Constitution, provides us,
Yep.
is actually like real power. But I think we're all succumbed to this. I say we're all, I use that loosely in quotes, and succumbed, I guess, as well. Yeah, it's just kind of like obsessed with this federal government, uh, media driven entertainment show out of Washington, D.C., when we can actually do things that will accomplish real liberty and really, like, really change the individual lives of the people of the community with what
Yep.
you're doing with You Are the Power.
It does work right now. It helps people right now, and it builds this movement to a level where we can affect those national and international issues. And even before we get to that point, if you have enough people that demand freedom at the local and state level, they eventually elect people that nullify as much of the bad stuff coming from the federal level as possible. Now, I do want to say, You Are the Power is not a political action committee. We are a 501c4 nonprofit. Our main focus is on issues-based activism, what they call citizen lobbying, basically. And so we don't get a lot. We will do some, but not a lot of directly supporting candidates. But with that said, if candidates and elected officials see our causes and want to work on those with us, even if they're doing it for selfish reasons to get themselves elected or
Mm,
reelected, good, fantastic.
amen.
That just shows that it's politically popular to push for libertarian solutions to things. So all roads lead towards issues-based local activism, and the fact that that's where everything else that we need comes from. Building a big movement, getting media attention, affecting policy change at the local level, building up the support we need to affect policy changes at the statewide and federal level, bringing people into the movement in terms of like elected officials and media, getting their attention so that we can affect more people and get more people involved. All of that starts with local issues-based activism. That's what we do every single day. Youarethepower.net. Sign up today.
Absolutely fire. Incredible. Thank you, Spike. I just love it. I love it so much so that anytime anybody asks me on Twitter, which is now my main platform, as you probably know, because of what Facebook did to my page,
Yeah.
those disgusting tyrants. I just,
Mm.
I have no, absolute, none, no love for that big tech empire over there for what they did to me. It's psychotic. I won't go into all that. Anyway, I want these things to be known. I want this information to be heard because the more and more that you dive into this, and I'm speaking to everyone that's politically engaged here, the more and more you dive into what's actually going on within the political sphere, within the
Mhm.
governmental scope and parachute of what we're seeing happening from the federal government all the way down to your local community,
Yep.
you find out more and more and more every day that
Yep.
the answer will be at the local level. Full stop.
Yep.
I'm sorry that that's not fancy and it's not entertaining or dressed up with a bunch of lipstick
It's
and
not as
skirt.
sexy. It's
It's
not as
not as
sexy, no.
sexy. I don't care. Those are the real answers. I'm
Although
sorry, they are.
what's
Go
really
ahead.
sexy is winning. And libertarians, and when I say libertarians, I don't even necessarily just mean members of the Libertarian Party.
Right,
Small L, people that believe in the philosophical underpinnings of libertarianism, people who believe in
right.
non-aggression and individual autonomy and decentralization of power and all the stuff that we support and believe in. We have the ability to win now over and over and over again. And when we do that, when we show time and time again that not only can we succeed in our goals, but that when we succeed, that people benefit, that harm is undone, that people who do harm to others are held accountable. When we do that, we change the narrative from libertarians are living a pipe dream and they can't win to libertarians have the only viable and rational solutions.
Right.
They are winning. And when they win, I win too. Maybe I'm a libertarian.
Yep, all day. And then when we talk about those ideas, and I've talked about, okay, so let me preface this with the fact that I understand that not everyone has the day to day, 8 to 5, which I don't have an 8 to 5. I have more like a 7 to 6 at sometimes job. They don't have the opportunistic values or just basic opportunities that I do when I get
Right.
to speak to new people every day. But I do. And this is the stuff that I talk about. And when I talk about these things with the regular people in my community, it resonates, people. It resonates with them because they understand. I cannot tell you how many people I've talked to that will literally confess to you outright. And I say, oh, well, that's the government's fault. And they're like, yeah, absolutely. They're completely corrupt. So,
Yeah.
yeah, keep the conversation going because eventually they will land at some sort of libertarian, if if God willing, anarchist point of view. And now we have a real resolution from the people that matter. Because remember, the government and military, they make up less than 1% of the people. We, the people, make up the 99%. We are the ants. They are the grasshoppers. If we're, referencing the Bugs Life movie there, and we have to make a change. And there's only one way that we can affect and actually make a difference and influence the voice and the mentality of the society that is around us. And that's if we have the balls to talk about it in public. I mean, I correct me if I'm wrong, Spike, but I just don't see any other way. We have to grow a pair, we have to grow a spine, and we have to talk about these things in basic public.
Yep, we have to talk about them and we have to show a viable solution. How many times have you, and not just you, everyone watching, how many times have you had a conversation with someone about liberty ideas, about libertarian solutions, and they go, well, fine, but or not even that. You'll say that something's wrong. You'll say, "Well, this isn't the right way to do it." And they go, "Well, what's your solution?" And so then you tell them and they go, "Well, show me where that's worked." And so you might be able to show them an example of someone who's done something similar, but it's often hard to find an example of that working because a lot of people
Yep.
haven't necessarily tried these things. Or if they did, it was sort of a watered down version or something like that. But imagine if you can point at dozens, hundreds of
Right.
examples of liberty activists in their towns, in their communities, in their counties, in their states, affecting positive change with wholeheartedly liberty based ideas on issues that they already agree with you on. They already agree with you that X, whatever X was a problem. And then they see that our solution actually fixed it. This is how we bring people in. Who was it? Cadence mentioned. She said, "Would love to hear y'all cover CPS and family court corruption." That's
Do it.
we have a few. We have a few causes that we're actually vetting right now. That God willing, if everything works out well, we will be working on that. We have to be careful with that stuff because they very often involve
Yeah.
active court cases, and we don't want to mess someone else's cause up, even if they are asking us to step in. We don't want to inadvertently mess up someone's court case or something like that, just to get some attention and do activism. But we have a few where we think we may be able to do exactly that, to be able to go in and talk about that and be effective and help families reunite. So more on that. Stay tuned, but more on that. I know we have a bunch of stuff to cover,
Yeah.
so I don't want
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
belabor
No,
the
you're
point, but
good.
that's what we're doing.
I No, you're good, man. Because I truly think that obviously, you and I, we come together quite a lot. Like I said, you're the most frequent guest on this podcast at this point, and we have great chemistry, and we talk about a lot of things and have a great time. But
Oh yeah.
more importantly, I think that this is what the grassroots literally. God, I hate even using that term because it's been so worn out and drugged through the mud. But
Yep.
at the end of the day, this is the kind of real change and real activism that has to happen. And it's something that I'm more fired up about than ever because the more I dive into politics, which I just started to do during the 2020 election, I voted for you, by the way. I know you already know that,
Thank
but
you.
letting
Yes.
everyone else know. It was a pretty wild experience having you on for the first time, meeting you, and then us developing into a real authentic friendship. It was pretty wild considering the
Yeah.
fact that I had no idea who you were and I voted for you in the 2020 election. So it's been a wild cycle. But this is something that's extraordinarily important to me because the
Yep.
more I dive off into this, the more I realize that the only way we can save this country is through local activism and local politics. And I hate to belabor the point. I'm sorry. I'm not
No,
sorry.
sure.
I'm
Yeah,
just, it just is
100%.
what it is. This is how we win, full stop. And
Yeah.
so and we'll move on from that because we're gonna continue to pound that point, and I
Yes.
will continue to pound that point on Twitter and with you on the show moving forward and all that. Let's head over to China. There are now tanks in the streets.
Of course.
This is not a 1989. This is not Tiananmen Square. Um, Earlier this week, Glenn Beck and his team, who I respect greatly, I believe that's one of the best journalistic teams, excuse me, in America. He reported that there's basically one of two outcomes here. Either the Communist Party of China will reform itself and kind of almost, subdue to the demands of the populace, or there will be again, like Mao, slaughters of millions of Chinese. Which outcome do you see? Do you see a third or fourth or fifth outcome?
I
And
think
how?
so. I think what we're seeing, I think it's already starting, is that the Chinese government is hedging their bets somewhat. And so
Okay.
they blinked quite a bit over the past few
Yeah, they
days,
did.
in that they basically lifted after spending the better part of the past few months pushing this zero COVID policy. COVID's the most dangerous thing in this country. I mean, if you think back to the worst parts of 2020, what our media was saying about COVID, that we were basically in an apocalypse. You know, if we went outside, we were going to die, or at the very least, we'd kill everyone around us. Like, I mean, the way that they talked about it is, if anything, the Chinese media has been even more intense. They've treated COVID as if it is like the apocalypse. And
Mhm.
as COVID has been around longer and longer, and the average Chinese person realizes that's not true, that COVID isn't, an existential threat to the entire Chinese country, and that, and that at any rate they can't afford to just be locked down indefinitely. There has been increasing pushback to that sort of apocalyptic zero COVID draconian nonsense they've been doing. And so after all these protests that we've been seeing and we've been covering, what we're now seeing is the Chinese government is almost completely backed off of those lockdowns, and they still have a few things in place, but nothing like it was before. And more importantly, they're having to change their messaging about how they talk about COVID. At the same time, they're making something clear that has always been the case: you aren't allowed to protest. So to not try to cede any kind of control from to the people. They're saying, "Oh, great news, everyone! It turns out that it is safe for us to reopen." But these terrible protesters aren't helping things, and so what they're doing is what they always do. They get very, very, very brutal with anyone that speaks out and shows dissent. I
Okay.
think that what we're going to see is that they more of that. I think we're going to see a continued. I think the Chinese government realizes that even as much control that they have over media and over the internet, it's still exponentially easier for someone on this side of China to speak to someone on this side of China in real time and compare notes. And so I think that they're having to be a lot more cagey than they've had to be in the past during the
Yeah.
Great Leap Forward, or even in the 1980s with Tiananmen Square. So I think they're going to be trying to peel off support for the protests by repealing the stuff, or a lot of the stuff that they were protesting against in the first place, which will lead a lot of people to say, okay, mission accomplished, I'm staying home, while simultaneously ratcheting up pressure on the protesters to make people be scared to go out and protest. So if the narrative is, hey, what we were protesting over is largely over and they're going to kill us if we go out on the street and say anything about it, they're hoping that will slow down the protests. It remains to be seen exactly how far this is going to go. I could see this turning into some serious changes if the people there realize that the long game is that they have an opportunity to really put a black eye on the Chinese Communist government. That could lead to some serious reforms. I don't know about a revolution per se, but it could lead to some serious reforms. The reason it can't lead to a revolution is because no one's armed except the Chinese government.
Right.
So it would take dissension from within, and I don't think we're there yet. I don't think that that's going to happen. Which that has something to say about gun control, because gun control is very
Hmm.
effective in China. It keeps the people from having that option on their plate. But yeah, I think what we'll probably be seeing is a continuing ratcheting down of the restrictions and a continued ratcheting up against the protesters. I could see, I mean, I'm not sure it can only lead to millions of dead, or, the Chinese government fully reforming. It certainly could lead to one of those. I think probably the most likely option is that the Chinese government and the Chinese people, whether either side will admit it openly, the Chinese government learned there's a limit to what they can put out,
Hmm.
and if nothing else, that's a positive development.
100% amen. Agree. And I would lean more towards and I never suggested that anyone had total reform on their
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
plate
yeah, yeah.
for
No, I know.
2022, but some reform, hey, look, I'll take it. And to me it
That's
sounds
very
like
possible. Some serious
yeah,
reform is possible. Yeah.
yeah, reform is obviously possible, and I think we're actually seeing it now, and I think that's an absolute net positive. However, um, even if this quote unquote some reform does happen, because we're so interlocked as a global community when it comes to supply, we're still effed. I still think that we're staring down an even worse possibility or pipeline of a supply chain crisis that is already
Oh, yeah.
detrimental and
Yep.
continuing to get worse. Am I wrong? Can you give us any positivity on that?
I
Or
think that anytime China does this zero COVID stuff, we see a direct correlation to a reduction in output. And because of this economic model that the West has developed, where Western political and business leaders pretend to be environmentally friendly by shutting down all their operations here and moving
Hmm,
them to countries where we don't see all the smog and all the ecological devastation they're doing there, which is weird because their main focus is climate change, which is global. But if it's happening over there, suddenly it doesn't matter anymore, because we have a different global climate than they do over there, right? But I think because of that strategy, when China, they used to say when the U.S. Sneezes, the world gets a flu. Now that's China. When
yeah.
China sneezes, the world runs out of cough medicine. And
Mhm.
I think that we have a situation that I think it's definitely going to affect the supply chain. It can definitely affect the economy. I think the economy's teetering anyway. I've saw some economic fundamentals that scared the hell out of me. We've seen the biggest drop in treasuries in years, and the treasuries drop was actually more dramatic than the securities drop, which is even scarier. We saw the
Yeah.
in response to the Fed ratcheting up the rates, which should have happened long ago. But in response to them ratcheting up the rates now, the housing market demand has completely fallen off the map. It's like double digit reduction, something like 20 something percent reduction. I think that we're usually what happens is a market crashes like completely, which leads to the rest of the markets that we're holding on by a thread crashing as well. And I think we're going to see the housing market lead just like it did in 2008. All of
Mm.
the numbers that we had in terms of the amount of losses, the amount of bailouts, and all of the amount of transfer of wealth from the poor to the wealthy, just add a zero to the end of it from 2008. And that's what we're about to face. And it's not, I don't think that there's going to be millions dead in the streets or any kind of apocalyptic thing. It's just going to be really rough on the economy. And this is a perfect example of why we need libertarian solutions for these things. Because what you're going to have is you're going to have two groups of people. You're going to have the establishment group that's going to say, actually three groups. You're going to have the establishment group that says, well, we're just going to do more TARP style bailouts and more corporate welfare and more economic stimulus and all of that, which is just going to kick the can down the road and lead to another crash 10, 15, 20 years from now that will be another order of magnitude worse than the one we're experiencing now. And then you're going to have, and actually, I'll lump them together into one group. You're going to have the socialists and the nationalist populists who are going to push for, who are going to understand correctly that the current neoliberal world order isn't working, but they're going to wrongheadedly push for economically illiterate policies that make the neoliberal world order look like the answer to everything in comparison. And those are the only options we have right now on a mainstream scale. And that's the problem. Whereas libertarians have the real solution to this, returning to sound money, getting government out of money entirely, which then removes the ability for government to create this trough for all the pigs to show up to. It eliminates the need for corporate lobbying, because government doesn't have the ability to hand them off endless corporate welfare anyway. And it forces companies, big, small, and in between, to either succeed or fail. And that will lead to an end to all of this malinvestment, the Austrian business cycle, which is caused by these malinvestment types of policies, or these policies that lead to malinvestment. All of that happens when libertarian ideas, economic ideas, get implemented instead of various versions of bad statist, centrally planned ideas. But we're not on the world stage to do that. And, I would be remiss not to say that that's exactly what we're working on, is building a libertarian movement of people who understand that the problem is the system. It's not just individual people. It's not just individual political parties. It's not just individual ideologies. It is a system where everything is being centrally planned by a relatively handful of people. Even if they were the smartest and most honest, trustworthy people running the show, they still couldn't possibly understand what we need as well as we do. It's just not a good way to organize people. And of course, that level of power and lack of accountability attracts the dumbest and least trustworthy people.
Yeah. I mean, that's all 100% facts. And even if you did fully believe that this handful of people that is pretending, and I use that word not hyperbolically, I mean that distinctly, I mean that definitionally, these handful of people that think that they can speak on the behalf or on the behest of the entire population of the country, they have no idea what you're going through. Okay, they have no idea what you face as an individual every day when you go to the supermarket, when you go to the gas station, when you go to your job, when you pay your taxes. They're not there's nothing relatable in that circumstance of your life to them at all whatsoever. So these people don't care about let's just pretend for 1 second that they actually pretended to care about you and your life. They still would have no recollection, no relativity of you and what you do, and of the vast billions of people that go through the poverty and the incessant human rights violations that governments impose upon the world every day.
It would be like if we're all trying to get somewhere and we're all figuring out how to walk there. And I go, okay, guys, I got a great idea, because I think we're all better together than we are separately, which is true. But I say, so the solution is we're going to form a human Voltron, and I'm going to be in the middle, and I'm going to make make you guys, the people that are the left leg, I'll tell you when to step left, and the people making up the right leg, I'll tell you to step right, and I'll direct the hands, and I'll stand way above, and that'll allow me to have a better eye view of how everything's going. Well, you know how that's going to go, even if that were physically possible. I'm not feeling the people that are actually touching the ground. So if there's like a huge pothole here and I missed it, then a bunch of people are going to die falling into the pothole. This thing's very quickly going to fall apart because I don't have the ability to direct everyone from a central planning like that. But if instead I say, okay, look, we're better together than we are apart. So let's walk together. And if people see potholes over here, they can walk around them. They can alert people behind them that it's there, and we can get there that way. We can help each other. The people that are in front can tell the people in the back, but we decentralize it as much as possible. When you're walking, you can feel where your feet are. You can see what's directly in front of you. Now, that's going to be a better way for things to happen. People will still fall, people will still trip, people will still get lost, but overall it's going to be a far better outcome than if we try to force everyone into an unnatural central planning. And that's a macrocosm or a microcosm of what's going on the world stage. What's going on is that there is just widespread belief in total central planning of all things. It's not a good way to organize, and we see it day to day, every single day. And again, it creates and invites corruption, but even if it didn't, it still would just be a bad way to organize. We're not ants, we're human beings. If we were ants, it would be a good way to organize, but we're not.
Yeah, that's correct. And as somebody who's ran a pest control business and been in the pest control industry
Yes.
for 10 years, I promise you that is not how that works. However, that being said, it is quite amazing to me that we still have this psychological de-evolution or devolution, however you want to say that, into understand like this is prevalent, Spike. I know you've seen this online a bunch. We're witnessing in real time people admitting and acknowledging that government is corrupt,
Oh, yeah.
but yet they're advocating
For
for
more government.
government to be the solution.
The average person believes that the problem with things is a sizable portion of the ruling class. It might be half of the ruling class. It might be most of the ruling class. It might be, a third of the ruling, but they know that a sizable portion of the ruling class is the problem. But they think that the only people who could stop them are the rest of the ruling class. These are the good ones. They're going to fix this. And the thing is that we know that's not true. And when you say it that way,
Right.
it makes it sound even more foolish than it is. But it is. That's what they're saying. They're saying, we see this all the time. But, the problem is the Democrats are doing this and that. Yes, they are. They're working with Republicans to do it. But yes, they're doing those things.
Right.
And the only one that can stop them are the Republicans. And then you say, yeah, but this Republican did this and this Republican did that and this Republican was part of that. And they go, yeah, but they're not real Republicans. They're rhinos. Sure, Mitch McConnell, the leader of the Senate Republicans, is a rhino. And if I point out that Donald Trump does something, well, he's a rhino too. He's always been a New York Democrat. Okay, fair enough. The former Republican, the last Republican president, who is effectively, or has been, now I wouldn't say, but in the past, was basically the
Right.
de facto leader of the Republican Party, a rhino. And you start going down the line and you name all of the Republican politicians, and every time that they've, just completely abandoned what they said that they were there for, and you go, yeah, but they're acting like a rhino. It's like, maybe you're the rhino. Maybe that's just what Republicans are, and you wanting a smaller government
Mm.
are not really a Republican because you don't line up with that. And you see the same thing with Democrats. They will, they will blame Republicans very often correctly for a variety and a host of things. And when you point out that the Democrats do the exact same thing, they go, yeah, but they're, that wasn't real democracy. Okay, great. That's good. And this, again, going back to my favorite drum to pound, the only way we're going to get people out of these ridiculous logic loops that they're in is show them a viable alternative. And that's what You Are the Power is doing. And that's what people who are spreading libertarian ideas around the country are doing. But it's one thing to spread an idea. It's another thing to demonstrate a solution. And we're doing the latter.
That's right. Yes. And no, I don't want you to loathe or regret or have any whatsoever negative feeling about revisiting You Are the Power and what you're trying to do within small communities, within the local areas. That is what we're supposed to be doing.
That's what we're here for.
It's just not sexy, and I want to make it sexy.
We're gonna make it sexy.
We are. Well, I want to make mainstream politics about local elections. That is what is actually going to affect change. So in reality, the only difference being is that unlike the federal government, we don't have to put lipsticks in a sexy dress on that disgusting, pathetic pig. We can, you can actually look at local politics as the answer, and it is sexy. We just have to make it mainstream. We're fighting against a corrupt regime that is working together to divide the people, you and I, against each other via the federal government and how it's portrayed and displayed on the TV. Let's make no mistake. Also, by the way, little shout out here to the small time uh, political pontificators and individual journalists like myself.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
we're making waves. We're doing this. Like the Daily Wire has unbelievable amounts of subscribers. They're not exactly, little bitty now. They're very Republican, but they were managed to change the culture war within their own subsystem. They're within the own ecosystem of what's happening on the internet
Yes.
amongst Tim Pool. And Young Turks was doing a great job for a long time. We have a lot of independent journalism that is affecting real change. So shout out to all of them. Um, I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. Hate to keep going back to it, but local politics affecting change in your local community, in the people that are around you. That is how we change the country. I wanted to ask you about and we're already like freaking 52 minutes in. This is ridiculous. It happens every time. It is what it is. I have to ask you about this.
Sure.
Kanye's lost his damn mind. Um, he's kind of been crazy for a long time. All right.
Yeah.
Everybody looked at him sideways in 2005 when he was talking about,
George Bush doesn't care about
yeah,
black people.
George
Yeah.
Bush doesn't care about black people.
Yeah.
So, what's your thoughts on what's happening with Kanye? Is it a mental health disorder? Is he just
I think
completely out there?
so. As someone who has been a fan of Kanye's music for 20 years now, yeah, I guess Through the Wire was 2003, so almost 20 years now. I He has made entire songs about the fact that he says and does self-destructive things, that you can't tell
Yeah,
him anything about it, that if you tell him not to, he's just going to do it more, and that it ultimately hurts him more than anyone else. Like, I mean, this he's done albums about this. Like that, this is
yeah,
nothing new, and I think that this is he just found the ultimate that. Like, he just found the most incredible way to go from being a largely beloved multi-billionaire to being a largely hated a multi-millionaire. And it's why I hesitate. I really haven't talked much about him specifically, because I think he needs, if anyone's going to engage with him, it needs to be people he cares about and trusts, telling him, I encourage you to get some help here. I think that we are looking at a man who is going through a divorce and a breaking up of his family, and is doing what he's done a lot in the past, which is make it about something else, and do a lot of harm to himself in the process. What I would rather address, and I don't buy the well, we need to talk about Kanye doing this because Kanye's words can cause violence. I want to be very clear about something. If someone, because of something Kanye said, goes and hurts someone else, and I don't even want to give an example, but just does something bad to Jews or anyone else, does something bad to other people, they were going
right.
to hurt people anyway. There is no one who was walking around who was just, very well adjusted and everything's going fine. And, they didn't really know what to think about Jews, or maybe they like Jews. And then they hear Kanye say some stuff about Jews and they go, my God, I know what I must do. That's not real. Like, Kanye's not a political leader. He's not a religious leader. He is an entertainer. And that's not going to do that. So if we're even going to, and same thing with Kyrie Irving, the idea of telling this guy, oh, you recommended a crappy documentary. Well, you need to sit in the corner until you stop thinking that the Jews run the international banking system, or like whatever. It's just the way that we're treating them is we're simultaneously treating them like children. Sit in the corner, or you're grounded until you say you don't believe this anymore, whether you actually do or not. But then also simultaneously saying that their words could lead to another Holocaust, or another a massive ramping up of hate crime. I don't buy that. I don't buy that entertainers and athletes, that they're not very well thought out words are going to cause all of this damage. So I want to preface by saying that. And I also want to say that I think I stand with Tim Pool on this. Tim was very clear that he thinks that the way and I would assume he'd think the same thing about Kyrie, but he was saying he didn't think that the way that Kanye's been treated over this has been fair at all, and I tend to agree for the most
Yeah,
part.
me too.
Especially when it comes to the banking stuff, it's one thing for a brand not to want to be associated with him anymore or whatever. But it's another thing for entire banks to say, yeah, no, you can't. All your money has to go. You have to get your money
That
out of our banks and stuff like
that
that.
that's
Because
frightening.
banking, it's very frightening, especially when banks have essentially set up a cartel for themselves. They're basically saying
Yeah.
you're not allowed to have money unless it's in a sock or something like that. So I that bothers me more than anything. But Tim also recognized that you cannot extrapolate from the fact that a very small handful, a relatively small handful of people control entertainment and banking and all these things, and that a disproportionately high number of them are Jewish, because a disproportionately high number of anyone in leadership are Jewish. That's just true of everything. That's always been the case. We weren't allowed to be engaged in blue collar work for hundreds of years. Like, we were literally banned from doing it. So we found other stuff. We were told, see all of these different things, you can't do any of these things. And so we said, okay, we'll make our own things. Like, that's always been the case. It's like when people say, oh, some of the main thinkers in communism were all Jews. Yes, and some of the main thinkers of libertarianism are all Jews. Mises, Walter Block, Rothbard, Ayn Rand, yes. And most of the main thinkers in conservatism have been Jews, and most of the main thinkers in progressivism have been Jews, and anarchism and all. Pick an ism, and Jews are disproportionately high in those things. But you can't extrapolate from that to say that everyone of that ethnicity is somehow complicit in that thing. It would be like saying that if this race of people are disproportionately more likely to engage in crime or something like that, then that means all of them are violent criminals. That's not true. You're talking about still a very small proportion of them who are doing so for their own personal reasons, nothing tied to their race or their ethnicity. So that's
Right.
the one takeaway I want to give, whether it's anyone saying this stuff. As soon as someone starts telling you that the problem is the Jews or the blacks or the Muslims or the white male Christian cishet whatever, as soon as someone starts telling you the problem is this entire collective of people, they're either lying to you or they're lying to themselves. And that kind of collectivism can lead to violence. Not necessarily Kanye saying this is going to do it, but the more people believe that that the problem is this, anyone who has this identity, especially intrinsic identities that you can't even help, that's a problem. You can't blame all gay people for Drag Time
Right.
Story Hour. You can't blame all white people for racism. You can't blame all black people for crime. And you certainly can't blame all Jewish people for the handful of Jews who have been apparently unfair to Kanye and others in the entertainment industry. I don't have any stake in the entertainment industry. I routinely get looked over for the monthly meetings of the Jewish World Ownership Council, despite my last name being Cohen. I mean, I don't know why I'm not getting invited to this. I have had my access to the space laser blocked multiple times. It's not, that's, collectivism is bad. And if Kanye is saying collectivist stuff, that's bad too. But I also think we need to stop being so hyperbolic about like the effect of Kanye's chilling words. Kanye West is an entertainer who needs some help.
I,
And I think the sooner we ignore him specifically, the sooner he no longer is getting the ego rush he's getting and the Messiah / victim martyr complex he's getting, and he can have to actually sit in a room with himself and consider what he's done and maybe reach out to people he trusts for help and hopefully not have to do this stuff anymore.
yeah, I 1000% agree on just about everything you said. I think 100% agree on everything you said there. As somebody who is technically a BIPOC Christian with who's a partial white, we don't subscribe. And here's my biggest issue with it: like, we do not subscribe to Jewish hate. We do not subscribe to
No,
anti-Semitism.
no,
We are a people, as Judeo-Christians, regardless of whatever race. And that is really the most freaking important part,
Yep.
regardless of the race, right? We I worship a Jewish guy. Okay. Like, I am a devout Christian who loves Jesus. He is a devout Jew. Like this, I don't want, because I don't, let me finish that sentence. I don't want everyone to have Kanye's words in accordance with Christianity conflated with anti-Semitism, because
Yep.
those two things, in my opinion, are mutually exclusive. As
Yep.
a
Yep.
devout follower of Jesus Christ, a devout follower of the way, disciple of Jesus Christ, you cannot be, in my opinion, I could be wrong. I'm not going to speak towards anybody else's relationship with God.
Yep.
However, in my opinion, you cannot be a devout follower and disciple of Jesus Christ and of the God of Abraham, Jacob, and Joseph, and be an anti-Semite at the same time.
To whatever extent you are collectivizing people and using it as a reason to hate them, you are certainly falling short of both testaments of the Bible. So if you're a Jew, you're a Christian, you're a Muslim, whatever, to whatever extent you are engaging in those things, you're falling short of what you were called to do. And I say that I'm a I guess a non-practicing Jew. My wife is a very devout Christian, and we're of the same accord of this, that the gospel certainly doesn't call you to lump people into groups and to treat them as the least, certainly not to treat it, to lump them in the groups and then treat them as the least charitable interpretation of that group. That's every atrocity at its core was powerful people realizing they could scapegoat entire people wholesale, and
Hmm.
that's led to every, if you I mean, slave trades, genocides, wars of conquest, every mass atrocity that you see, it works out into people being lumped into groups and then being mistreated based on that poor interpretation of them. Even things like the Great Leap Forward in China, which led to as many as 100 million, certainly tens of millions of people being starved to death, or executed
Yep.
or killed en masse. That was because they were all being lumped in with the bourgeoisie and the
Yep.
capitalists, when they were literally just people saying, I'm starving to death because you're forcing me to farm collectively, and this isn't working for my community or for me or my family. And so they got lumped in with this demonized collective of bourgeoisie and rounded up and killed, or just being allowed to starve to
Yep.
death. Same thing with the Holodomor in Ukraine during Soviet
Whoa,
rule under
that's a
Stalin.
good
Same
one.
thing with the Holocaust. Same thing with any of these. People were being collectivized and then mistreated based on the scapegoating of that collective.
That's absolutely freaking fire. It really sums it up as collectivism being the cancer, in which, on the conversely, with specific religions like Judaism, Muslim, and Christianity,
Yep.
speak to the individual specifically
Exactly.
and say, you are your own person and you are responsible for your actions. You are responsible for your morality and how you are going to inflect that morality
Yep.
upon the populace that currently surrounds you, and the objectivity of in which that you're going to portray said morality. And all of that is absolutely walked out by your actions
Exactly.
that should be exemplified preceding your words, right? Your words say one thing, and then your actions should follow them up. So,
Yeah,
were
absolutely.
you?
Yeah, Libertarian Lady asked for my thoughts on Balenciaga. I will say the short answer is, the more I see, the more concerned I am. This is looking more and more like there was some shady stuff happening there. When I first saw it, I'm like, it looks like they hired some weirdo to do some of their one of
Can't
their ad
find it.
campaigns, and it's biting them in the butt. But I mean, this seems to be more and more like an actual pattern of having some weird ties to people that were treating children very weirdly and in a sexual way. with that said, I have been a long proponent of boycotting brands like Balenciaga, or as I call it, not
Amen.
overpaying for cotton. I think that I have, this shirt I believe cost me $12. Like and they make shirts that look largely like this,
Oh,
but with like Balenciaga on it, and they add two zeros to it. I just think it's absolutely foolish. It makes no. I've never understood paying big money to be a billboard for the company that just took my money. I remember being a kid and saving up, like, I want to say it was like $200 to buy a pair of Big Hurt Frank Thomases, and I was talking with,
that's
I
great.
think someone my mom
White
worked
Sox,
with, like a
baby.
like yeah, yes, White Sox. And I was talking with, like, I think a coworker of my mom's, and I was like all proud of the fact that I had saved up all this money to buy these Big Hurts. And he's like, "How much did you pay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, $200, 250 or 150, whatever it was, ridiculous amount of money, even now, but especially back then." And he went, "Well, that sounds pretty dumb, huh?" And I went, yeah. And that was the last time I ever spent serious, like, ridiculous money. People make fun of my shoes. I buy Skechers comfort shoes in bulk. That's how Jewish I am, since we're talking about Jews. Um, but yeah, now I do want to say, like, I've seen this thing where they're like, "Oh, Balenciaga means Baal or Satan is king in Latin." My
Yes.
understanding is Balenciaga is a common Spanish Basque pseudonym, or not pseudonym, last
Look,
name, and that the guy who started it was named, his last name was Balenciaga. So I don't think that this is a,
look,
Satanist background thing. I think it's just
it,
that's the guy's last name, but it is a very
I'm, I'm,
interesting thing. That's very
I'm gonna
that
push.
was a
I'm gonna push back on that. I'm gonna
okay.
push back on that, but not on air, right? I want you to go look into it later. Balenciaga, yes. Look into Bal, NC, and then Aga in its
No, I know,
Latin
and it
translation, and then go look at the photographs of certain cinematography that Balenciaga has produced, some of which
yeah,
have put out
that I agree
the
with.
BAL. Yeah,
Yeah. No,
some of which
that
have
I
put out
agree
the
with.
BAL,
And
BAAL.
I wonder if, even if the initial etymology was just that it was the guy's last name, that they've leaned into the bow part of it, which means it's even worse.
Very
Like, I
possible.
mean, there's just something the more I see, because I'm not a conspiracy guy. Usually I'm the first one to be like, there's probably a better answer to this. The more I see, the more I'm like,
I'm the
really,
pers-
guys? Like, this is like this actually looks legit. Like, this was a problem. But like I said, I avoid all of this by buying George brand. Like, I
yeah,
buy
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
avoid this. Now, God knows who George is. I mean,
yeah. I don't
he could
know.
he could be a
I
very
don't
bad
know either.
George. I don't know. I don't
Look,
know George the axe murderer or something. But until I know that George was named after an axe murderer, I'm going to continue buying their shirts for $10.
yeah, insane. We buy what we can at the
Yes,
price that we can.
that makes
Obviously,
sense. For yes,
yeah, right. Nobody in their right mind is buying Balenciaga apparel, regardless, despite putting aside the fact that whether the conspiracy theory of them
yeah.
being
It was
Satanist,
stupid. It was
pedophilic,
stupid to begin with. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, but I still think it's worth um, traveling the rabbit hole because these elitists do buy this material. They do associate themselves with said materials. And then they've been pretty blatantly obvious about what they're doing with
Yeah.
said brand. So there's a rabbit hole to be trailed there.
That's the scary
However,
part is, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's very scary. But for the more normal people, like the average, 7.9 billion people on the planet,
Yeah.
we have better important things to do. And so I know you're very short on time, Spike. You always are very, very short on time because of what you're doing with, and yes, I'm gonna bring it back. You are the power
You were the
dot
power.
net. That's why the man is so freaking busy. Go visit it.
Yeah.
Let's end it on your thoughts about Twitter. You were banned very recently, which I
Yes.
was freaking shocked,
Yes.
shocked to hear.
Yes.
I'm like, if somebody's gonna get banned, a libertarian on Twitter, it's gonna be me. I'm the spicy guy.
So
What
now
the hell? What happened?
So I think it was a bot. And to their credit, after it took a week, but it's because it took an actual manual review. My account was restored. So basically, I said something along the lines of the consequences of gun control activism are innocent gun owners and their dogs being shot to death by police officers to reduce gun violence. And so I put that out. And minutes later, my account was locked and I appealed it. And it took a few days because I'm sure it happened in minutes because a bot saw like shot to death by police or whatever, or they, want them to be shot by, however it was worded, that it did the thing. And so I appealed it. A few days later, I was back on. And the very next thing I tweeted was, so anyways, like I was saying, the consequences of gun control are people being shot to death by police and their dogs in order to reduce gun violence. And I responded to a few people who were trying to get me back on. I said, I'm back, and I have absolutely not learned my lesson. Now, what's funny is that I have another Twitter story, which is that last night there was this. I was invited to speak on a Twitter Spaces on a Twitter panel about the Twitter files drop, and Elon Musk came on. And so the way they did it was, so that it wasn't just people bombing him with questions. They lined us up and said, okay, you ask him a question, you ask him a question, you ask him a question, and went through. And so I was next to ask my question, and and while I was waiting, I saw you're no longer a speaker, and I tried to like request to be a speaker again, and it wouldn't let me. And so I got out of Twitter, went back onto Twitter, got back in, requested, and it wouldn't let me. So I restarted my phone, went on, inboxed the people that invited me to let them know what I was trying to do. And they couldn't invite me. I couldn't get back on. And it was like, I had here was an opportunity for me to ask Elon directly a question. And like probably 20 seconds before it was my turn, I got booted. And we believe it's because we were crashing Twitter Spaces. There were over 100, I think it was like 120 people, 120,000 people that were listening. And they'd never had anywhere near that in Twitter Spaces before. And I think we were just testing the limits of their system. So we'll see. Next time I'll ask him. But my question for him was, because we were talking about suppression of voices. And, my question was, and I was surprised no one else brought it up, the greatest suppression of voices that we have seen in recent years was the suppression of dissent against the COVID regime. The wisdom and the so-called science behind the idea of the lockdowns and the mandates, the suppression of anyone who was providing evidence and even just discourse on the origins of COVID, whether or not it was zoonotic in origin or whether it had to do with the Wuhan virology lab, which was right there. And then especially once the Echo Health Alliance information came out and the National Institutes of Health admitting that they engaged in gain of function researching and changing the definition of gain of function research so that they wouldn't get in trouble for it. Like all of that was being actively suppressed, shadow banned, suspended, banned, fact checked, all of that. And so my question to him was, if you're against the suppression of dissenting voice and allowing for freedom of speech, does that mean, can we trust that you will make sure that Twitter will never be a place that suppresses dissenting voices on things that are, especially things that important, where, in an emergency, we're being told you have to do this. If there's dissenting voices against that, will you commit to not not allowing Twitter to be a place where that kind of crushing of dissent happens in the first place? I'll ask him next time.
And we look forward to you asking him next time. It's pretty funny. I will say this though, because I have to do it, man. I got to do it. It's funny, like to watch you try to get into the speaker role of being able to communicate with Elon Musk.
I was in it, and then they kicked it, and then I lost it. They invited me. That was the wild thing. Was I'm on there, and I'm like, I've been invited to speak to Elon Musk, And I'm
Yeah,
like,
a
that's
lot of
pretty damn
people
cool.
that there's a lot of people that would love that opportunity to speak to you.
Right.
They get
And I'm
kicked
like,
off.
yeah, I'm like, here's my moment to speak to Elon Musk. It's not to say it's going to ever be the only moment or whatever, but it's like, here's an
Right.
opportunity that kind of came. Well, and that was the other thing was what was wild was they just kind of they were like, hey, would you like to be on this space? We've had people like Elon Musk on our spaces before, and I'm like, sure. And honestly, I didn't even know much about that group that was doing the spaces, because I haven't done much in Twitter space. I am now, but that was my
Right.
first time on Twitter spaces. I was like trying to figure out how to make it work and how to use the like emojis and raise my hand and stuff like
Right.
that. It was like, a couple last year when I was figuring out how to use Clubhouse, and so I'm on there trying to figure out how to do it. And then here comes Elon Musk, and they're like, "Okay, we're gonna line up for questions." So I raised my hand, and they said, "Okay, this person, and then Spike." And when the person in front of me went to ask the question, I'm like listening, and I'm like, "Okay," and I knew what my question, and I'm sitting there waiting. I'm like, someone's gonna ask him about, you know, the COVID regime, right? Someone
Oh,
is bound.
that's so
No one was
familiar.
asking him, and I'm like, "Well, this is some serious kismet." Like, finally, here's a chance to ask him flat out. And to my knowledge, no one else has asked him this. Like, just flat out asked him, like, are you gonna make sure that we never see something they've talked about the Hunter Biden laptop. They've talked about, election interference. No one's talked about the fact that, or at least to my knowledge, no one has specifically brought up to Elon, or Elon hasn't specifically mentioned the fact that the greatest wholesale worldwide suppression of dissent that we've seen probably ever, certainly thanks to the internet, there's more dissent ever, which means there was more suppression than ever, was during the COVID regime. Like, that was easily the worst, right? And so here was the chance to ask
Easily.
him. I'll ask him next time. Next time I'm on the phone with Elon Musk, I'll ask him that.
Oh, it's so awesome. It's so funny, right? It, like, and trust me, and you know this, right? Everybody in the audience right now who's at this point already, there's been a thousand or more viewers, and there will be several thousand post this episode that
Oh yeah,
watch this
yeah.
show. They're all going to relate so much to what you just said. Like, I had my opportunity to ask Elon a question, and it's just
I'll ask him next time. Next time
yeah,
I'm on the
yeah, yeah.
phone with him,
I'll
I'll
ask
ask
him
him.
next time.
I'll
I'll ask
ask
him
him
next
next
time.
time.
It's just so funny because a lot of people are begging to get one question from you, and it's so relatable. I hate to bring it to that, man,
Yes.
but it's important because there's people on this earth that rely on our leaders, our vocal leaders, not our elected slave masters, but our vocal leaders that are in these spaces that have powerful voices and influences in these intersectional spaces that we call social media, right?
Yep.
You're one of them. You're a massive, you're probably the biggest voice when it comes to cyberbullying the federal agencies, right? I mean, like, there is no substitute in which that could be stated. Who is not a greater influential person in that atmosphere than you are? And so
And
it's
cyberbullying the government, definitely. I do have to
yes,
give a shout out to Chris Forstner. I think that's how you say his name.
close
For
enough.
don't think I didn't notice. Thanks to Chris, you still got my wholesome Sabbath meme for last week. Even though I wasn't,
You
I
saw
wasn't
that.
allowed back on until afterwards. Yeah, or the week before.
You saw
Oh,
that.
anyway, whenever it was that I was kicked off, we missed Twitter missed one of my wholesome Sabbath memes. Chris got it out
Okay.
there, so shout out to you, Chris. Thanks for holding it down while I was locked out of my account.
Chris is one of the OG followers of my Twitter page when there
Yep.
was like 20 freaking followers. Now I'm at almost 12,000, which is
Nice.
remarkable to me. Like,
That's awesome,
I'm
man.
floored, right? Like, it's like, doesn't matter where I go on the internet, for whatever reason, you guys love me. I can't thank you enough. I still can't understand it at all. I don't understand why you guys picked me up like this, but I do. and Spike, I tell this to my audience all the time, man. This feels like an elected position. And when I say it feels like, that's being an understatement. I 100% feels like it is an elected position. This is something that people elect you to be. They elect you with follows,
Yeah.
likes, and shares,
Yep.
and they understand and they appreciate your voice, and so they follow you and they like you and they share what you have to say. And it's quite remarkable. And big shout out to Chris. I'm glad you shouted Chris out because he's been an OG follower. He actually helped me get to the Liz to Williker event in
In
Pennsylvania that
Pennsylvania.
you
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
at.
Yeah.
Remember at
Yep.
the it was like a
Yep.
bar, it was like a beer tap thing.
It was yeah, a
You remember
brewery,
that?
right?
Yeah, a brewery. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, a
Yes.
brewery. It was a beer brewery where the people that were sent to get there were done so via monetary election on basically just Twitter.
Yep.
And I actually won that. I won that over
Yep.
you and
Yep.
Nick Sarwalk.
Yep.
And
Yep. Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
so big shout out to Chris.
Absolutely.
Again, there's a very significant highlight there in the fact that democracy can actually have a good, strong voice when applied appropriately. Okay, and
Yes.
we'll leave it at there. Spike, thank you, man. You were
Thank you.
magnificent as always. I love you so much. You are a great friend. More importantly, you're an absolutely great mentor, somebody that I, you know, admired from a distance for quite a while. And then you decided for whatever reason, I still don't know why, to pick me up as your student, and that's why I wear the shirt, young Padawan, that
Yes. Yes.
Spike handed me himself,
Yep.
and
In Mississippi. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, in Mississippi, and I
Well,
can't thank you enough for that. Uh,
well,
give us your final thoughts.
Well, first of all, I love being on. You know, I love you. Tasha loves you. You're basically a part of the family. You're now Noel
Thank you.
Cohen, whether you like it or not.
Thank
And I'm happy. I'm always happy to come on the show. I thank you all for tuning in. Again, You Are the Power is doing the work we need to do to grow the
That's
liberty
right.
movement. I'd love all of you to be a part of it. YouAreThePower.net. Now, there's some additional stuff. Libertarian Lady brought up the fact that we have a really cool shirt right now that says "Cyberbully the Government," but it's not just one shirt. We have a bunch of different collections of shirts and Christmas sweaters that say "Cyberbully the Government." If you go to youarethepower.net/cyber, you get to see all of our Cyberbully the Government gear. I mentioned Christmas sweaters. We have a few different other versions of the Christmas sweater or holiday sweater. Sorry. I don't even, I'm Jewish. I'm calling it a Christmas sweater. But if you go to youarethepower.net/holiday, you will see all of our ugly holiday sweater hoodie stuff on there as well. And if you go to youarethepower.net/store, you'll see all of our stuff. But if you just want to see the cyberbully stuff, go to youarethepower.net/cyber. And if you just want to see all of our holiday stuff, go to youarethepower.net/holiday. And again, if you want to be a part of the fastest growing movement to use local issues as a way to help people now and to bring people into the liberty movement so we can do even bigger things in the future, I invite you to join us at You Are the Power by going to youarethepower.net. Membership is free. We'd love to have you be a part of it. And Noel, thanks again for having me on, man.
Spike, no, thank you, sir. You were
No, thank
absolutely
you.
no, thank you.
No, you.
No, you. That'll go on forever.
Yeah.
You are absolutely an amazing friend, mentor, absolutely incredible, influential voice within inside the liberty movement of America, which speaks more broadly to the actual movement that is this country. You are, in my opinion, and y'all can disagree with me. I don't care. Am I going to give bias to my very good friend and mentor, Spike Cohen? Yes, of course. But kick rocks. This guy is absolutely one of the most influential voices and most powerful voices that we have moving in this country right now. Tasha, much more powerful,
Oh,
much more
it's not even
beautiful.
close. Yeah.
Not even close.
No, it's no. I will push back on that. Much more powerful. I still say, and apparently I'm in the minority, which as a libertarian I'm used to that. I think that we are equally attractive. That's just my opinion. But anyway, I do have to. Someone mentioned FTX. I am utterly shocked that the guy who was pushing for more regulation in a given space turned out to be the most corrupt actor in that space. I'm just so shocked by that.
Completely
Anyway,
shocked.
guys, love you. Noel, love you. Thank you all for tuning in to Off the Wire with the Cajun Libertarian.
Spike, love you so much, man. Thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, man.
Absolutely incredible. Thank you, Spike Cohen, for hanging out. It looks like our next discussion will probably premiere and start with FTX, apparently, according to Spike Cohen. So we'll see where that goes. We'll see if it's a headline in the next segment. I love you all. Been fantastic. I will see you very soon. Man, I don't even know what to say. This was such an incredibly influential and impactful episode. Please share it with your friends. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join the YouTube channel. I'm damn near close to 1,000 subscribers, meaning that I can get monetized, which would help my family out a lot. Free to you, monetized for me. So Anchor.fm, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, basically anywhere you can get your podcast with fantastic guests like Spike Cohen and additional fantastic content with me by myself. We're at an hour and 27 minutes, which means we are 27 minutes over. For some of y'all, that would feel like a long podcast. But for those of us that pay attention to the news, that was a very short podcast. And Spike Cohen is the man. And I am so grateful to have him as a mentor and an absolute friend. Period. I love you very much. I'm going to post one more comment. You are the power.net. You are the power.net. Full stop. End of discussion. At the end of the day, there is nothing that we can talk about, nothing whatsoever, that will trump the fact that we have power and influence over our local communities. None whatsoever. You are the power.net. Period. Spike Cohen. Follow me on all my socials. Please. The Cajun Libertarian. You can just Google that or question that every single platform. I'm the only one that's going to pop up because I'm the only one with the following that's going to pop up first. I love you all very, very, very much. What a fantastic episode. And what a fantastic show. Made possible by you. Share it with your friends. Subscribe. I love you all. And I am out.